And that's what I coach people on with boundaries and inner confidence in Christ. Like
Yeah.
that's really my main thing is people learning. I went from a life of love me, everyone, please, I need approval, and to being a puppet to the point that the church I went to, God loved them, I love them, I still love them, but if they said jump, I'm jumping.
Yeah.
They became God to me. And if we're not careful, man can become God. He can be on
Mm,
the throne, even in leadership. If you look for people's approval rather than
yeah.
God's approval, it's dangerous. It becomes an idol. And
Yes.
so we have to get to a place so in depth with God, the love of God, that He never leaves us, He never forsakes us. He's always with us, and knowing really who we are, knowing that, identifying with that, right? We're a daughter of a king.
Hmm.
Um, that when people disapprove of you, what does your father say? What does God say? Because that's the only voice that should matter at the end of the day. Which wraps up why I brought up every single disappointment. The
Hmm.
people that God used are the same people that rejected me. But what I learned in that is if I didn't know who I was, I would have took their rejection and I would have thought, God sucks. This sucks. I'm walking away. But I didn't. I was still, God is a redeemer. Man will let me down. God is a redeemer. And so when it came to a whole nother reverse of, okay, God's telling me to do something, but they don't think I could do it. Are you going to believe them? What are you going to do? You're at another rather reverse where it's like, well, God told me to do it, even if you reject me. So it went from understanding rejection to overcoming rejection
Hmm.
to continue into the plan of God. And
Yeah.
it's absolutely freeing when you are not looking for the approval of the world and it is ultimately all about God. You are a freaking powerhouse that the enemy does not want to live.
Can you break that down for us a little bit on,
Is it lies?
yeah, but like, how do you, like, I get it theoretically, I so get it, but then, like, how to actually do that? I know you have a
Yeah,
couple of podcasts, like one where you were sharing like mantras, for instance, because this all ties in. You were saying you were sharing mantras for telling people no or setting boundaries, because like
yeah.
this people pleasing thing, finding or like idolizing people and putting them in the place of God rather than realizing, like my worth is in being His daughter. It's like,
I was forced to only so practical. I love practical.
yeah.
Yeah, so I was funny story. I was actually forced to I was so exhausted by not being able to get the approval that I longed for with the people that I admired in this church. It was a toxic environment. It was just not good. My husband worked there. It almost cost my marriage. I was so exhausted. I was at a place where it's like, I'm never going to be good enough. And if I continue trying to be good enough for these people, I'm going to kill myself. I'm going to. So
Mhm.
I was forced to know who God was. So really it starts there. So practical is because it's so easier said than done. Well, you don't need their approval, live empowered. But there needs to be an acceptance. A few things. First, we do need to accept the fact that we want man's approval. We want to be approved. We want to be needed. And
Yeah.
it doesn't even come from, it comes from that word. We're trained that way as a child with our kindergarten teacher, with the girls that didn't like our picture. So
Yeah.
there's already things implanted in us when you were the mother of your family. So
Mm.
you were expected to be a certain level than if you had siblings, right? So you're expected, I have to care for my mother.
Yeah.
So you're already trained in your brain to get approval from other people that
Yeah.
you admire, that you love, even maybe that you don't, because you're afraid of what they might think of you, because maybe someone in your life said, don't do that because they're going to look at you funny, right?
Mhm.
So you're already trained. So really, you really have to like sit back for a little bit and ask yourself, where did this start? And then accept the fact that, okay, I care what people think, and that's okay.
Mhm.
Now, where do I take the fact that I care so much and I want to belong so much? Where do I direct that? Well, to God. Well, what does that look like? So it's really getting in his word for yourself,
Mhm.
not through someone else.
Yeah.
So the church is for fellowship. The church is for fellowshipping with other believers, worshiping with other believers. It is one day a week. You are not going to grow your relationship with God on a Sunday. I'm sorry, you're not.
Mhm.
You have got to do that all by yourself. You've got to do that on your own. And that is through the Bible. And there's so many resources out there that help you do that. And so, really, it's discovering what the word says and helping you understand the word is, the Bible app for free and doing
Yeah.
devotionals. That's what really ultimately helped me understand the word, was doing that. Um, and then prayer, praying to God, talking to God. Well, prayer is not a normal language for people that are just discovering God. It's really weird for them. And
Mhm.
so I always tell people to pray like I'm talking to you,
Yep.
not in the closet. We're not in the war room. The war is all around us. So
Yeah.
pray while you're cleaning the kitchen. Turn on worship music. And then use your imagination. God says in the Bible to have faith like a child, and if you
Mhm.
don't have faith like a child, then you can't enter the kingdom of God. Well, children have a great imagination, right?
Yeah.
Like, they tell us the best stories, and so you have to come back as a child. So you're not only looking at yourself, you're not only like looking at, okay, that's where it started, that's who I am, but you also have to go back to a child, like that's my Father in heaven. He loves me, he's proud of me. Like, I'm proud. And then tell yourself every day, talk, discipline yourself. Today, even today, I had to like tell myself to shut up. I
Yeah.
started to get into this negative, like, self-pity mode, and I was like, no, turn on your worship music, do
Mhm.
your workout, get in the shower. You can do this. You
Yes.
are loved. God didn't leave you. God's not ashamed of you. I
Mhm.
had to tell my brain that. I had to say it
Yeah.
out of my mouth. So you have to like speak to yourself. And it may seem weird, but you have to I don't care if you're in cradle position. I am confident. I am a child of God. I make my kids do that every morning. They have to speak out affirmations
Well, and
until they
that's so
believe
good
it.
too. Like going back to your childhood, a lot of what was spoken over you, you ended up becoming for the worse at first until you were saved and realized whose you were. So the fact that you have your kids doing that from a young age, that's amazing.
Yeah. And then the boundaries aspect. So it's with people in general. No is a beautiful word. It really is. And so you have to this is why I love marriage. This is where marriage is really fun. This is where it's really fun because your husband is a part of that boundary with you. So always go to if you have a spouse, always go to him. Always, because he's going to help you create these boundaries. So you have to this is where you kind of have to be selfish with God. If it doesn't if it feels like you're burning out, listen to your body, listen to your mind. Like, if you feel like you're doing something volunteer work and it's just miserable, like, it's not even that you're uncomfortable, but you're miserable, and you're realizing, I'm doing this because of why. Ask yourself, why am I doing this for this person? Why am I saying yes to this person? Has nothing to do with God. Has nothing to do with God. Has everything to do with them. And so really kind of reflect on your life. Like, if it's taking away from your marriage, if it's
Mhm.
taking away from your children, if it is taking away from your time with God, then you probably need to evaluate that and set some boundaries.
Yeah.
Like, say no. Set this time apart. This is only the time that I have for God. This is only the time that I have for my children. This is only the time that, I don't, you have things that you don't compromise. Maybe it's church on Sunday. I don't compromise church on Sunday. I
Yeah.
don't compromise my date nights. I don't compromise my TV time at night with my spouse. I don't compromise that time. Like, you have to be able to
That's
create these healthy boundaries, which helps you be confident, because now you've taken your life back. It's not in someone else's hands anymore.
mhm.
It's in your
Yeah.
hands, and
I
you have
actually started
control.
I started practicing that after listening to your podcast where I remember like going into work and I was like I remember like my boss for some reason like, the people pleasing can especially show up with a boss.
Oh,
Um
yeah.
and he kind of just like says things, brushes it off, whatever, like nothing I say feels important. And I went into his office and I asked him something and he was like, "Oh, maybe I'll get to it like later or something like this." And I was like, "Okay." And I like started to walk out feeling defeated and then I turned around and I was like, "Actually, like I need to know by EOD because this is important." And he was like, "Okay, I'll get it to you by EOD." And that
Good
was
for
one like
you.
Yeah, that was one way I practiced it, and then I also practiced it in my women's Bible study because I would always get, you know, and that's a good thing too, like, and it can be too much of a good thing, like, you
It
still
can
have to.
be, yeah, things seem good. Church Bible studies seem good, get-togethers seem good, but there still has to be a boundary in it.
Yes. So I showed up and I was like, "I have to leave at this time," because I would always get pulled aside and pulled into all these conversations, and I'd be exhausted and miserable, and
Yeah,
mosquitoes are biting me, and
yeah.
my husband's like, "Why do you stand there and just, like, deal with it?" And I'm like, "I don't know, I don't wanna, like, offend anybody."
It's
So,
uncomfortable to say like, "Hey, I gotta go.
I
It was
gotta
so nice talking to
go.
you," and there's a way to do it. There's a
Yeah.
way to be like, "Hey, I gotta go. I'll see you next Bible study." And here's the thing, don't over explain yourself. You don't
Mm,
even have to tell them about your spouse, just be like, "Hey, I gotta go. See you. Have a great day." "Hey,
yeah.
I can't go to dinner tonight." Like, even when I have to reschedule meetings, like, unless, like, I'm cool with you, like, it'll be brief. Like, there was 2 interviews I had to reschedule the other day when I rescheduled yours, and I
Uh-huh.
got more into an explanation with you because I felt like I said, I feel like we're friends,
Yeah.
rather than there were other people I was like, "Hey, I have something in my family. We're gonna have to reschedule. I'm sorry."
Yeah. Period.
Period. It's so freeing once you do it. It seems intimidating because you're retraining your brain.